It seems like to me that everything you just talked about is that we've elected a Congress to go up and do. And it seems like what we're doing here is substituting the will of that Congress that we elected to do what they're not doing. And I've kind of got a hard time with that. I'm struggling with it. Help me with that. Why can't we get our Congress to do what it's supposed to do?
Is that a rhetorical question?
Doesn't anyone notice this? I feel like I'm taking crazy pills!
I don't want you to ride. I don't want you to write to your congressman because I wouldn't know what to tell you to write. I don't know what to do about the depression and the inflation and the Russians and the crime in the streets. All I know is that first, you've got to get mad.
Has the whole world gone crazy? Am I the only one around here who gives a shit about the rule?
You have the luxury of not knowing what I know.
I want you to get up now. I want all of you to get up out of your chairs. I want you to get up right now and go to the window, open it, and stick your head out and yell, "I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore!"
So that state legislator, it doesn't matter who he is, he's arguing a case that he's totally perplexed. He can't wrap his head around why Article 5 was written the way it was. He can't wrap his head around why we need to do this. He can't wrap his head around any of it. And I can tell you, if you're one of those people, if you're one of the people out there who are angry, all right, if you're one of the people who are upset, and it doesn't matter if you're on the left or the right, if you're out there and you don't like the division in this country, and you want to hear a message of unity, but all you hear is diversity. You want to hear a message of equality, but all you get is equity. And maybe you like equity and don't know the difference. Maybe that's the case, because they've been doing this through schools, slowly morphing equality into equity to the point where we have a couple of generations right now who think they're the same thing. They're not the same thing. They're very, very different. Diversity is not unity. Think about it now. If you've been getting pumped the diversity message forever, think to yourself how often you've heard someone talking about unity. Think of how many messages these people have delivered that involve not seeing race, that involve not seeing gender and all these things, that involve just seeing other Americans. Regardless. I'm not discounting someone's life experience. It's none of that. What I'm saying is just stop and think about what the world would be like, what this country would be like if everybody just stopped. Well, the reality of the matter is the vast majority of this country has stopped. The vast majority of this country is past it. But we've got at least two generations, at least two, that are constantly being disconnected, and it's causing all kinds of problems. So in the message of unity, we're going to link this directly with the Convention of States, because I don't think a lot of people understand what the Convention of States is, and I don't think people understand how close we are to pulling that off and what the impact of it would be. So we're going to do a 3-video series here for each piece, one for each piece of the Convention of States, and what the argument is against it. And I'm more than happy to respond to comments, etc. below, because I'm addressing conservatives here too. So the reality of the matter is there are 3 pieces to this legislation. 15 states have already passed resolutions, and there are more than what we need to get this thing called. And how it works, if you're not familiar, Article 5 explains how you can do how you can create an amendment to the Constitution. Now, you're all familiar with 2/3 House, 2/3, well, most of you might be familiar. The process that's always been done in history was 2/3 of the House, 2/3 of the Senate. They all vote on an amendment to the Constitution. That amendment then gets handed to the states. 3/4 of the states are required to ratify it. And at that point, it becomes an official amendment to the Constitution. Every amendment that we've ever done has come this way. One of them was really generated, the Bill of Rights, it's kind of a big one, was really generated by the threat to call a convention, but they ended up realizing that it was going to go through anyway, so the feds just went ahead and handled it. All right, but that's the only time, and it was a pretty good one, I would think. I think most of us would agree the Bill of Rights are a good thing. So Article 5 lists that process out. Now, it also, on the other side, lists out something else, another way that the Constitution can be amended, and it was very specifically written for the purpose that we're in right now. And what this way is no involvement from the federal government whatsoever. 2/3 of the states, instead of 2/3 of Congress, but 2/3 of the states, vote to call a convention. During that convention, their delegates, everyone gets one delegate. That delegate is sent to the convention with very specific instructions as to what they can discuss and what they can create. Now, these delegates get together. Now, Congress is forced at this point, so it's 34 states that are needed. We've got 15 already done. Call a convention. Congress has to call the convention once the states have decided it's time. Now, but the three topics that are on everyone's resolutions, and you can look these up. We have them all listed on our website by state, so you can go, you can see where your state is, you can see what states got pending resolutions, what states have already passed them, what states have in one house passed but not the other, and then what states are disengaged. Very few are disengaged. You could probably name them off the top of your head, but most of them have something going. Or have something drawn up already. And all of them, and we have the actual resolutions listed for each state, so you can see where your state stands. So when you look at them, there are three things that they're covering. One is, and I think they're things that we can all agree with. One of them is term limits. Term limits for Congress. Is that not a unifying issue? Is that not an issue that we can all agree on? The second one is a balanced budget amendment, so that we could try and restore the value of the United States dollar. The only reason our money is worth anything right now is because everyone else sucks worse. That's it. Our money is backed up by nothing, and every time they pass one of these bills, and this is not a Marxist issue. The Republicans just signed on to this infrastructure bill, which blows trillions of, we're already $1 trillion over budget, and this blows, they're totally okay with it, with blowing another $1 trillion. So Republicans are not off the hook here. And this is the point, right? This is the point. So it's trying to restore our dollar and put an adult in the room for managing the nation's finances, because there are no adults in the room right now. They're all throwing monopoly money around like children. And the third one is government overreach through regulatory agencies mostly. Okay, so there are other pieces to this, but the big one here is the regulatory agencies. We've grown into an animal where the executive branch has decided they were going to usurp Congress and our elected officials by creating these regulatory agencies, which can create punishable laws just by calling them a regulation. That's it. Just change the name. You're good. That's it. Oh, you know what? I'm the president. I can't get, both houses of Congress, or at least one of them, is not on my side. Can't even get this thing I want done voted on. Well, you know what? It is an education bill, and I do have the Department of Education. Therefore, or maybe, you know what? Maybe I could tie it into the environment some way and let the EPA regulate it for me. One way or the other, they get it through. And it's completely unconstitutional on its face. Anything that these agencies put through is completely unconstitutional. And frankly, when it comes to this Marxist movement, if you're on this and that's something that's pissing you off, they can't complete that without these regulatory agencies. They can't get it done. They simply can't get it done. Okay? So those are the three pieces. But right now, we're going to go over term limits. All right? So term limits. You would think to yourself, aren't we all for this, right? I mean, Democratic voters, not the politicians, but the Democratic voters have called for this. Conservative voters have called for this. This is a unifying point of entry. This is something we can all agree on. It's kind of like the unholy relationship between corporations and politicians. We all agree on these things, right? Well, if those things bother us, then lifetime politicians are what we need to get rid of. So the argument against this that you'll likely hear from those who haven't thought this through is that, well, we have term limits. They're called elections. That's my favorite. That's my favorite. Because it completely ignores what's going on in Washington right now. Completely ignores it. It doesn't matter who you vote for at this point. And when I say that, I don't mean that the person you vote for does not truly in there, like you might know them personally. And you may be like, this person is a lifetime, veteran, war hero, superhero on the police force. Maybe they're an insane success story in business and industry and finances. You're concerned for your state, whatever it may be. Okay, they go in legit. The problem is when they get there. It's kind of like being the big kid in class in 8th grade. And then you get into high school and realize, well, you're just a freshman. So quickly you realize, and they quickly remind you that whatever it is that you wanted to do, maybe it requires getting on a certain committee, maybe it requires, certain access to things. Well, you know what? If you're not playing the game, if you don't engage in the game that they tell you got to play, well, you're not going to get on that committee. Because the people who have been in office for 30 years are controlling that committee. You're not going to, and their interests are not the same as your state. So it doesn't matter that your state needs something and you have a good plan to do it. You're never going to be able to get that plan through unless you play ball. Now, if you play ball, now they'll start to consider it. But now you're selling your soul. Okay, now you're already going down that path, and you may, in the end, get some watered-down version of what you wanted, but you will have had to concede your morals and principles at least 10 to 20 times for every one thing that you get through. Why? Because of the seniority structure that is in Congress. When you put people to 2 terms, you don't have people going into this with lifelong ambitions, because you ain't going to be there for your whole life, no matter how you go about it. No matter how good you are, doesn't matter. You ain't going to be there. If you're that good after 12 years in the Senate or after 4 years in the House, go ahead and endorse somebody who thinks just like you. Because that person's going to come in fresh. And the reality of the matter is there will be no one who's been there for more than 12 years. You won't have these Nancy Pelosi's and Mitch McConnell's who are just perverting our nation with their mere presence. This power that they hold is insane. This fixes that. And there's no election that's going to fix that. There's nothing you're going to do if you're someone who's completely lost faith, in the election process as it is. But let's assume the election process is perfectly secured and the states all wrap it up and they all pass legislation to fix whatever issues they may have had, even if it's perfect. Even if you get the people you want in, the system is going to change them. They are not going to change the system. So term limits was the first piece. I wanted to make the point as to what the argument is against it, because really that's the only argument for term limits. There really is no other. I mean, there's nothing negative to say about term limits. I think most people agree with it already, but there are some people who use that argument. Now, if you know of another argument that you've heard and you need it debunked or you need it shot down, by all means, throw it out there in the comments and I will be more than happy to go after it. But right now, I wanted to address term limits. The next video I post will be addressing balanced budget amendments and what the ramifications of that could be. And that's going to be a deeper situation because it is going to be the first time in a long time that adults have actually been in the room managing finances. And I'm including your state legislatures when you hear some of the arguments they're making against it as well. So get yourself educated. Head over to our website. There are links there that will allow you to look for your representative. They'll allow you to go ahead and find your congressman, find your state legislatures who are putting these resolutions through or holding them back. And we've listed off a few states in more detail under the state as you click through who it is that's holding it back, and start letting them know that you're going to remove them. I'm telling you right now, 1,000, maybe 2,000 seriously active people in each of these states, and it's done. And it's done. They're going to be coming up soon. The legislatures are going to be opening soon, and we cannot let another year go by. We cannot let another year go by allowing them to shelve it, because that's what they're doing. They're putting it on a shelf, and they're just pretending it doesn't exist. Because you're not screaming about it. It's time we all understand this. This is the peaceful way. This is the legal way. We are all patriots, and as patriots, and when I say patriots, I mean Democrats too. I mean anyone who loves this country. If you love this country, and you love its Constitution, let's use it. Use it. It was written to be used. They didn't put that into Article 5 just so that we could all theorize about it and talk about it in classrooms. They put it in because this day would come. So let's use it. Rant over.
And like that,